All right, I'm here to give you my honest opinion on the San Francisco 49ers through 2024 so far. And let's talk about first that we all understand this is a disappointment on the year. The San Francisco 49ers fall to 5-6, embarrassed in Green Bay. Obviously, they're down half their starting core, which, that's a story for a different day. But nonetheless, the season has not gone as anyone had hoped or anticipated. So let's talk about why it hasn't gone that way, at least from my perspective. Dating all the way, and for me, it starts at the Super Bowl. I had the privilege to be able to be credentialed to the Super Bowl, so I covered the whole week and the lead up to it. I covered the game itself. I was in the press room after the game. I was face to face with Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Fred Warner, Eric Armstead, and just seeing the dejection on their faces. That was something that stood out to me right off the rip. And of course, you lose the Super Bowl in that fashion. Again, another 10-point lead lost in the fourth quarter, losing into overtime the way they did and how they did, and obviously the injuries that they suffered along the way in that game, just emotional letdown, right? So right out the rip, very devastating game, very heartbreaking game. All right. And you're like, well, why are you talking about the Super Bowl? We're talking about this season. And this is where I really think it plays into a big part, because if you know anything about me and you follow my channel, you understand that I always talk about the human element of football. I rarely ever evaluate this game without, upholding the human element. A lot of people talk about, what, just stats or whatever, the X's and O's, but it's important to know that there's an emotional element of being a football player, of being a successful football player. And when you look at this offseason and you look at the turmoil and the just drama of the offseason, felt like we never got a break, um, from the the pain of that Super Bowl. It felt like it just kind of translated into the negotiations with Ayuk and with Trent Williams, and then that created a bad sour taste. It felt like we couldn't ever just, you know, separate, because it happened, it started days after the Super Bowl, with, posts that were being made. I mean, maybe not even 24 hours after the Super Bowl it started. So that lasted all the way into training camp. And, as you guys know, I covered training camp, and the vibes just weren't there. I talked about it a lot. I think the most poignant day for me was Dwight Clark Day. 8-7, the 49ers had all their, alumni out there. It was a big, fan appreciation day. It was a big day to bring former 49ers, and it was the 49ers' worst practice of training camp, and arguably one of the worst training camp practices I've ever seen in my years of covering training camp. So, the vibes just weren't good in training camp. I remember doing my reaction video after that and just being like, dude, what was that? And it wasn't even just execution. It was just energy. It was urgency. It was a lot of the things that I think we've seen this season from the 2024 49ers. So again, you start this season and you get the win against the New York Jets. That's a good spot to be in, but then you get completely outgunned and outmatched by the Minnesota Vikings on the road. And that kind of started some of the questions. And then the 49ers, get up to another 10-point lead against the Rams, and that slips through their hands. And I think that's where, like, it started to set in. Like, obviously, the Vikings game wasn't a good game. They were out schemed, outperformed, out executed in almost every facet of that game. And then, at least with the Rams, Brock and the offense was pretty much on fire, and they were dialing. That was the Jawan Jennings game where he had three touchdowns, I believe it was. Brock was playing great, but the defense, couldn't hold it at the end, and a 10-point lead evaporated. And again, a lot of those feelings of the Super Bowl came back up. And, we saw them win against the Patriots. It should have been we talked about it. It was they scored over 30 points, but it should have been a 50 to 60 point game just based on how it went. They still could have played better in that game. And then they played the Arizona Cardinals, and almost same thing as the Rams game. They're up substantially. They're in control of this game, and then it slips through their fingertips in the fourth quarter yet again. And then it's like, okay, we go to Seattle, beat the brakes off Seattle, and you're starting to see the pattern of roller coaster of emotions. And then we go to the Chiefs, where the Chiefs dismantle us, undress us. They cooked the 49ers. I've never seen the 49ers beat so badly than I saw in that week 7 game um, against the Chiefs. Specifically the offense. The defense actually played well in that game. The defense kept it a manageable game, but the offense had nothing. They had absolutely nothing. And it's just brutal, man. And then you get the win against the Cowboys, you go into the bye, and then you got the Bucks, and you almost lose that game to the Bucks, a game you shouldn't have lost. And then you have another collapse against the Seattle Seahawks, and then you go to Green Bay and get embarrassed. Yes, there are injuries along the way. There are a lot of circumstances, bad calls, things of that nature that are a part of the game and that happen. But for me, it all comes down to the emotional letdown. It comes down because, again, it's to me, you're not properly evaluating the game of football if you don't analyze all aspects of the game, and which includes the human element. And the human element I've always held at a very high regard because I've played, and I understand how that contributes. I understand what that means to be dejected, be down, how the play looks as a result of that, not having confidence or having confidence. And it's like the human element is such a huge aspect of it. We focus so much on height, weight, speed, and stats and those types of things. But it's like you look at the San Francisco 49ers over these last couple years, it's the same core group of guys. You have absolute like they had out some very unfortunate things. They have gutted out uh, uh losing their quarterback in 2018, completely ending their season and just kind of playing for nothing for that whole year. 2019 have a season of destiny, losing in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl in just heartbreaking fashion, a game they all thought they had won. They were literally celebrating on the sideline. You lose that game. Then 2020 happens. Absolute disaster of a season in 2020. Then 2021 happens, and it's again injuries right off the bat. You lose Mostert. You lose uh, uh, what's his name? JV, Jason Verrett. First game of the year. You win 2 and then you lose 4, and it's just immediately in like panic mode, and the 49ers somehow, some way fight and claw and scratch their way into the playoffs. They get in, and then they lose the NFC Championship game with more heartbreak. Jaquaski Tart could have picked off a pass that would have sealed the game. Um, again, another comeback from behind victory from the Rams, division opponent that goes on to win the Super Bowl. In 2022, the San Francisco 49ers, play pretty well. They look good. They look solid, but they suffer multiple quarterback injuries. Trey Lance goes down with the injury week 2 against Seattle. Jimmy Garoppolo goes down against Miami. Brock Purdy comes in and saves the season, keeps them alive. They don't lose a game until he goes down with injury. I happen to be in the stands at that game for the NFC Championship game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I can't tell you and express to you the feeling of being in the first half of a game knowing you're going to lose. Like, there's no chance you're going to win. And seeing Brock Purdy, have to go back out and play quarterback with a torn UCL after Josh Johnson goes down with like a concussion, and you're seeing Brock trying to throw screen passes with a torn UCL, and all he can do is hand off the football, and all you're watching is you're watching the Titanic go down, and there's nothing you can do about it because they don't have a quarterback, and that very well could have been a team that went on to win the Super Bowl. Okay, so their season, they felt like it kind of got taken from them. It felt like they didn't have that opportunity, and it was stripped from them because of injury. So they came into that next season in 2023 super hyped, super ready to go, and firing on all cylinders. And they started off hot, 5-0. They go through that 3-game skid. They come back, win some games. They run into the you know Ravens on Christmas, and they kind of you know gave them a run for their money. And then they get the first round bye. They have a dogfight with the Packers, a game that they were behind. They somehow come back and they win that game. Very stressful, very emotional. Was in the stands for that one as well. And then NFC Championship game absolutely just looked like it was over by the second half. It was one of the most eerie feelings listening to Journey play Don't Stop Believin' at halftime against a stadium who was shell shocked. But I think it was 24-7 at that point. And the 49ers come out of halftime, put everything they have into it, and they come back and they win that game. A game they probably shouldn't have won, but they did. They won it. And so they advanced to the Super Bowl. And then they get to the Super Bowl, and we know what happens there. That's what I started with. And then you go into this season, and this is what I'm contributing it to. Yes, you can look at the X's and O's. Yes, you can look at the injuries. Yes, you can look at bad calls. You can look at a lot of different elements to why the 49er season is going this way. But for me, it's an emotional letdown. It's an emotional just exhaustion. It's human beings who have to go out and, you know, not only put their health and body on the lines, but they're so overly scrutinized and just eviscerated in the eye of public opinion if they don't execute, or they don't win, or they don't, doesn't go well. And I just think that over time that catches up to you. And I think with these games that we've seen, for example, like the ones that they've lost in division, those feel like emotional drops. And I think it adds on to the baggage that they are already carrying into this season, already carrying through this season. Yes, this team is a couple possessions away of being one of the top teams in the NFC from a record perspective, but they didn't do that. And as a result of that, they are now at the bottom, and their playoff chances are slim right now. And yes, they're one game out of the NFC West, but there's a lot to overcome there. And a lot of things need to break their way. They don't have the luxury of controlling their own destiny. They need a lot of help from other people to even have a chance at the playoffs. And again, I just think it comes down to that. Like, everyone on this team and roster is burnt out. The emotion of everything that I've just explained just coming to a head, and the ball's not bouncing their way. They're not getting the calls. Things just aren't going their way this season, on top of being in their own way, on top of not executing, not taking advantage of situations, losing leads, turnovers, penalties, all of it. It's a cluster. It is a cluster. And I think it again is just also, while it is being a cluster, it's contributing to the emotional letdown that they've already been feeling. Like, it's been a rocky season from this since week 2. Like, it's been a challenge, and I think it's a lot for these guys to overcome. And I think that, you add the injuries to the top of the list. You add, the situations of Ricky Pearsall getting shot, Charvarius Ward losing his daughter, things like that, things that are uncontrollable. on top of everything that's happening, and it can be too much. And it's not based on this season in a vacuum. It's based on everything. It's based on the whole situation. It's based on everything that's happened under Kyle Shanahan's tenure. And I think that this team they look exhausted. And that's my assessment. Yes, we can get nitty-gritty with a lot of other details of why they aren't having success. But I think, again, you have to understand that every single one of those guys are human. They have emotions, they have thoughts, they have feelings. They they feel the scrutiny, they feel the pressure, they put it on themselves, and then how they're losing adds another layer of frustration. I just think that this season has taken a bit of a tidal wave of just emotional letdown, and it just keeps pounding and hitting them and crashing over them. And at a certain point, it's like, you're human. You can only take so much. And there's 6 games left. That there It's a tough spot to be in, but that's my assessment. That's my assessment. Agree, disagree, share your thoughts and opinions on your own, what you think it is, in the comments below, and let me know what you guys are feeling. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe.